Feel like you were part of something bigger just by listening to him. When he looked at you, you felt like the most important person in the room. I fell hard, and honestly, I thought I'd won the lottery. You're too smart to be stuck in some corporate job, Marcus told me 6 months into our relationship. When we get married, you can focus on what really matters, building a family, creating a home. I'll take care of everything else. It sounded romantic at the time. It sounded like partnership. We got married 2 years later in this beautiful ceremony that Patricia planned, down to the last detail. Even then, she made comments about my dress being a bit much for someone from your background, but I ignored it because I was happy. Marcus seemed happy. We were building a life together. When Emma was born, I made the decision to stay home. Marcus was working 18-hour days getting his real estate business off the ground, and honestly, I wanted to be there for every milestone, every first word, every tiny moment of her growing up. This is temporary, I told myself. Once she's in school, I'll go back to work. But somewhere along the way, temporary became permanent, and partnership became something else entirely. It started small. Marcus would handle the finances because he was better with numbers. I'd ask about our savings, and he'd say, "Don't worry about it, everything's fine." When I wanted to buy something for the house or the kids, he'd say, "Just ask me first so I can make sure we have room in the budget." It felt reasonable. He was the one bringing in the money, after all. When Jake was born 3 years later, the pattern was already set. I was completely dependent on Marcus for everything. I didn't have access to our bank accounts. I didn't know how much money we had or where it was kept. My weekly allowance for groceries and household expenses was exactly enough to cover the basics, with maybe $10 left over if I was careful. "Sarah doesn't need to worry her pretty little head about finances," Marcus would tell his friends at dinner parties, and they'd all laugh like it was charming. Meanwhile, I'd smile and nod, feeling smaller and smaller each time. The isolation crept in slowly. My old friends from work drifted away because I never had money to go out, and I was always canceling plans when Marcus needed me to handle something at home. The few mom friends I made at Emma's school seemed to live in a different world, one where they could make decisions about their own lives without asking permission. Our house in Westlake Hills was beautiful. I'll give Marcus that. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a kitchen that looked like something from a magazine. But it never felt like mine. Everything was chosen by Marcus or Patricia. The furniture, the paint colors, even the family photos on the walls were arranged according to Patricia's taste. I was living in someone else's idea of what my life should look like. The worst part wasn't the money, though. It was watching my confidence disappear piece by piece. I started second-guessing every decision, from what to make for dinner to how to discipline the kids. "Are you sure about that?" became Marcus's favorite phrase whenever I expressed an opinion. After 8 years of hearing it, I wasn't sure about anything anymore. Emma started asking questions around her 9th birthday. "Mom, why do you always have to ask Dad before we can do things?" she said one afternoon when I told her I needed to check with Marcus before signing her up for art classes. My friend Sophia's mom just signed her up for soccer without asking anyone. I didn't have a good answer for her, and that's when I realized my children were learning that this was normal, that women needed permission to make choices about their own lives. That realization terrified me more than being broke ever could. The first crack in my perfect prison came on a Tuesday morning in March when I was doing laundry and found a receipt in Marcus's shirt pocket. Dinner at Romano's, our anniversary restaurant, for 2 people on a night when he told me he was working late at the office. The bill was for $87, and I knew I hadn't been there. My hands were shaking as I stared at that piece of paper. Romano's was where Marcus proposed to me 6 years earlier. It was our special place, the one restaurant he always said was too meaningful to go to casually. But here was proof he'd taken someone else there, and he'd spent more on one dinner than he gave me for groceries in a week. I confronted him that evening after the kids were in bed. "Marcus, I found this receipt. Were you at Romano's last Tuesday?" He barely looked up from his laptop. "Yeah, client dinner, big potential deal. Why?" "You always said that restaurant was special for us, and you told me you were at the office until 10. That's when he looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before, cold, almost annoyed that I was. When my husband Marcus threw our divorce papers on the kitchen table and said, "Let her take the kids. She won't last a month," I had exactly $47 to my name and two terrified children staring at me from the doorway. I'm Sarah, and 3 months ago I was living what everyone thought was the perfect life. Beautiful house in Austin, Texas, successful husband, two amazing kids. But behind those picture-perfect family photos on Facebook was a woman who hadn't touched her own bank account in 8 years, who had to ask permission to buy groceries, and who was slowly disappearing into someone else's idea of who she should be. My daughter Emma is 10 years old, and she's always been the brave one in our family. Even at her age, she notices everything. The way people talk, the way they look at each other, the way tension fills a room before anyone even says a word. She's got these bright green eyes that seem to see right through people's pretenses, and she's never been afraid to speak her mind. Emma loves reading, especially stories about strong women who overcome impossible odds. I used to think she got that from the books, but now I realize she was preparing for our own story. My son Jake is 7, and he's the gentle soul of our family. He's quieter than his sister, more sensitive to the emotions swirling around him. Jake expresses himself through his artwork. He's constantly drawing pictures of families, houses, and dreams that are bigger than his small hands can capture on paper. When things got tense between Marcus and me, Jake would disappear into his room with his colored pencils, creating worlds where everyone was happy and safe. Marcus is my soon-to-be ex-husband, and for 8 years, I thought I knew him. He's a real estate developer who built his business from the ground up, and I genuinely admired his ambition when we first met. He was charming, confident, and promised me a life where I'd never have to worry about anything. "Focus on the kids," he'd say. "I'll handle everything else." What I didn't realize was that handling everything meant controlling everything, including me. The person who really wanted to see me fail was Patricia, Marcus's mother. She's 62 years old, a retired bank manager who never thought I was good enough for her precious son. Patricia has this way of smiling while delivering the cruelest comments, like she's doing you a favor by pointing out your flaws. She's always been polished, put together, and convinced that success is only measured by how much money you have in the bank and what neighborhood you live in. Standing in that kitchen with Marcus's cold stare and Patricia's satisfied smirk, I felt like I was drowning. 8 years of being told I couldn't manage money, couldn't make decisions, couldn't survive without them, had almost convinced me they were right. I'd given up my marketing career when Emma was born, and my confidence had slowly eroded with each passing year of financial dependence. But here's what Marcus and his mother didn't know about me. I wasn't the same person who had walked away from her career 8 years ago. I was a mother now, and I had been watching my daughter Emma grow into this fierce, independent little girl who believed she could conquer the world. I had been listening to my son Jake's quiet observations about fairness and kindness, and I realized that my children were learning about life by watching me. His mother Patricia was standing right behind him, arms crossed, when she laughed and said, "They'll be back here begging for food within 2 weeks. Sarah doesn't have the first clue about taking care of herself, let alone 2 children." In that moment, something shifted inside me. Maybe it was seeing the fear in Emma's eyes, or the way Jake was clutching his favorite drawing pad against his chest like a shield. Maybe it was realizing that my children's future depended on what I did next. But I looked Patricia straight in the eye and said, "We'll see about that." What happened on the first day of school 3 months later made Emma's teacher put her pen down and the entire classroom go silent. It was the moment that proved everything Marcus and Patricia thought they knew about me was wrong. It was the moment my daughter showed the world exactly what kind of woman her mother really was. And it all started with $47 and a decision that would change our lives forever. Let me take you back to where this all began, because the woman standing in that kitchen with $47 wasn't always broke and desperate. 8 years earlier, I was Sarah Chen, a marketing coordinator at a growing tech startup in downtown Austin. I had my own apartment, my own car payment, and a 401k that I was actually proud of. I was building something. Then I met Marcus at a networking event. He was this confident, ambitious guy who talked about his vision for transforming Austin's real estate market. He had this way of making you questioning him. "Sarah, you're being paranoid. It's just a restaurant. I can't avoid every place we've been together when I'm conducting business." But I wasn't paranoid, and I started paying attention. Late nights became more frequent. Weekend emergencies at job sites happened almost every Saturday. His phone, which used to sit openly on the kitchen counter, now went everywhere with him, even to the bathroom. The breaking point came 3 weeks later when I was looking for our tax documents on his laptop while he was in the shower. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I just needed to find the mortgage interest statement for our accountant. But when I opened his photos folder, my entire world collapsed. There they were, pictures of Marcus with a woman I'd never seen before. They were at Romano's, at the lake house I didn't even know we owned, at what looked like a weekend getaway. She was beautiful, young, and looked at Marcus the way I used to, before 8 years of don't worry about it had worn me down. Her name was Jessica. I found her contact information in his phone while my heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. She was his business partner in the new development project, the one he'd been working late on for months. When Marcus came out of the shower, I was sitting on our bed with his laptop open, staring at a photo of him kissing another woman. "How long?" was all I could manage to say. He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He just sighed like I was interrupting something important. "About a year. Sarah, this doesn't have to change anything for you and the kids." "Doesn't have to change anything?" I stood up, and for the first time in years, I raised my voice. "You've been lying to me for a year, spending our money on another woman, and you think this doesn't change anything? Our money?" Marcus laughed, and it was the cruelest sound I'd ever heard. "Sarah, you haven't contributed a dime to this family in 8 years. This is my money, my business, my decision." That's when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Emma and Jake were standing in the doorway, their faces pale and confused. Emma was holding Jake's hand, and I could see in her eyes that she'd heard enough to understand that our family was falling apart. "Kids, go back to your rooms," Marcus said firmly. "This is between your mother and me." But Emma didn't move. She looked at me with those bright green eyes and said, "Mom, are you okay?" That question broke something open inside me. Here was my 10-year-old daughter checking on me because she could see that I was drowning. I realized that my children were watching me accept being treated like I was worthless, and they were learning that this was normal. "I want a divorce," I said, and the words surprised even me. Marcus shrugged. "Fine, but don't think you're taking my kids and half my assets just because you're hurt. You want to leave? Take the kids. See how far you get without me." That's when I heard Patricia's voice from downstairs. She'd been in the kitchen the whole time, and she'd heard everything. "Let her take them, Marcus," she called up. "She won't last a month. They'll be back here begging for food within 2 weeks." The battle lines were drawn, and I was standing on the wrong side with nothing but $47 and 2 children who needed me to figure out how to win a war I'd never prepared for. The morning after I found those photos, I woke up at 5 a.m. and did something I hadn't done in 8 years. I made a decision without asking anyone's permission. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Marcus had thrown those divorce papers, and I wrote down everything I knew about my situation. It wasn't pretty. I had $47 in my old checking account that I'd forgotten about. I had a marketing degree that was 8 years dusty. I had 2 children who needed stability, food, and a mother who wasn't falling apart. But I also had something Marcus and Patricia didn't know about. While they thought I was just playing house for 8 years, I'd been volunteering with the PTA, organizing fundraisers, managing social media for Emma's school, and coordinating community events. I'd been using my marketing skills without even realizing it. I called my old college roommate Maya at 6 a.m. She'd been trying to reach out for years, but I'd always been too embarrassed to maintain the friendship. Maya was now a successful marketing director in Dallas, and she answered on the first ring. "Sarah? Oh my God, it's been forever. Are you okay? You sound—" "Maya, I need help. I'm getting divorced, I have no money, and I need to remember how to be the person I used to be." Without hesitation, she said, "What do you need?" That conversation lasted 3 hours. Maya walked me through updating my LinkedIn profile, explained how the marketing industry had evolved, and connected me with freelance platforms I'd never heard of. She also said something that changed everything. "Sarah, you've been marketing your entire life. Every fundraiser you organized, every event you planned, every social media post you made for the school, that's all marketing. You just need to own it." The hardest part was telling Emma and Jake. I sat them down that afternoon and tried to explain that we were going to move out of the only home they'd ever known. "Where are we going to live?" Jake asked, his voice so small it broke my heart. "I found us a little apartment across town. It's smaller than this house, but it's going to be ours, just the three of us." Emma looked at me with those perceptive green eyes. "Are you scared, Mom?" I could have lied. I probably should have lied. But instead, I said, "Yes, I'm terrified, but I'm also excited because we're going to build something new together, and I need you both to help me." Emma straightened her shoulders. "What do you need us to do?" "I need you to be patient while I figure out how to work again. I need you to help me remember that I'm strong enough to take care of us. And I need you to tell me if I'm doing anything that makes you feel unsafe or scared." Jake climbed into my lap. "Are we going to be poor?" "We're going to have less money than we're used to," I said honestly. "But we're going to be okay. I promise." The apartment I found was in a different school district, which meant Emma and Jake would have to start over with new teachers and new friends. It was small, just 2 bedrooms, which meant the kids would share a room for the first time ever. But it was clean, safe, and most importantly, Marcus couldn't just walk in whenever he wanted. Moving day was brutal. Patricia stood in the driveway, arms crossed, watching us load our belongings into Maya's borrowed truck. She didn't say a word, but her expression said everything. "You're making a mistake. You'll be back. You can't do this." Marcus wasn't even there. He was at work, which probably meant he was with Jessica. The first night in our new place, we ordered pizza with the last of my $47 and sat on the floor of our empty living room. Emma looked around and said, "It's quiet here." "Good quiet or bad quiet?" I asked. "Good quiet," Jake said. "Nobody's yelling." That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat at my laptop and applied for my first freelance project, a social media campaign for a local bakery. The pay was only $300, but it was a start. I also did something I hadn't done in years. I looked in the mirror and said out loud, "You can do this, Sarah. You're not the same person who needed permission to buy groceries. You're going to prove them wrong." The war Patricia and Marcus thought they'd already won? It was just beginning. 3 months. That's all it took to prove Patricia and Marcus completely wrong. But the moment that changed everything happened on Emma's first day at her new school. I had been working 18-hour days, taking on every freelance project I could find. The bakery campaign led to a restaurant client, which led to a small tech startup, which led to a referral to Austin's fastest-growing boutique fitness chain. My laptop became my lifeline, and I was building something I'd forgotten I was capable of, a business that was actually mine. Emma and Jake had adjusted to our new life better than I'd dared to hope. Emma threw herself into her new school with the same determination she'd inherited from me, while Jake discovered that his quiet artistic nature made him popular with kids who appreciated his thoughtful drawings and kind spirit. But I had no idea that my children were watching me rebuild our lives and learning lessons I hadn't intended to teach them. It was September 15th, a Tuesday morning that started like any other. I was rushing to get the kids ready for school while simultaneously answering emails from 3 different clients. My phone was buzzing with notifications about a social media campaign that had just gone viral for one of my restaurant clients. Their sales had increased 40% in 2 weeks because of the strategy I'd developed. "Mom, you're smiling at your phone again," Emma said, adjusting her new school backpack. "Good day at work, baby. Are you ready for your presentation today?" Emma's new teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, had assigned the class to share something special about their families. Emma had been working on it for days, but she'd been secretive about what she planned to say. "I'm ready," Emma said with a confidence that reminded me of myself before I'd lost it. I dropped them off at Riverside Elementary, a public school that was nothing like the private academy they'd attended in Westlake Hills, but where the teachers actually knew my children's names and cared about their individual progress. At 2 p.m. my phone rang. It was Mrs. Rodriguez. "Mrs. Chen, I'm calling about Emma's presentation today. I wanted you to know what happened." My heart stopped. Is everything okay? Did something go wrong? No, quite the opposite. I've been teaching for 15 years, and I've never had a student presentation affect me quite like this. I think you should know what your daughter said. Mrs. Rodriguez told me that when it was Emma's turn to present, she walked to the front of the classroom with her head held high. She looked directly at her classmates and said, "I want to tell you about my mom, because she's the strongest person I know." 3 months ago, my dad and my grandma said terrible things about my mom. They said she couldn't take care of me and my brother, Jake. They said we'd be back begging for food within 2 weeks. They laughed at her and said she'd built nothing with her life. Mrs. Rodriguez said the classroom had gone completely quiet. Even the usually restless kids were paying attention. Emma continued, "But my mom built this life from nothing. When we had to move out of our old house, she had $47. That's all. But she didn't give up. She started her own marketing business, working at night after Jake and I went to bed. She got client after client because she's really good at what she does. Last week, she told me we're moving into a beautiful new house next month, one that she bought with her own money. She showed me the pictures, and it has a big backyard where Jake can play, and a reading nook by the window where I can do homework." Mrs. Rodriguez said she had to put her pen down because her hands were shaking, but Emma wasn't finished. "My dad and grandma thought being a mom for 8 years meant she wasn't building anything, but she was building me and Jake. She was building strength. She was building the kind of person who doesn't give up when people tell her she can't do something. My mom proved that you don't need someone else's money to have a good life. You need to believe in yourself and work really hard. She shows me every day that girls can build their own futures." When Mrs. Rodriguez finished telling me this story, I was crying so hard I could barely speak. "Mrs. Chen, I've never heard a 10-year-old speak with such clarity about resilience and independence. Your daughter understands something that many adults never learn. Whatever you're doing, it's working." That afternoon, when I picked up Emma and Jake from school, Emma hugged me extra tight. "I told them about you, Mom," she said simply. And that's when I knew we had won. 2 weeks after Emma's presentation, we moved into our new house. It wasn't as big as the Westlake Hills mansion, but it was ours. Every piece of furniture, every paint color, every family photo on the wall was chosen by us. For the first time in 8 years, I was living in a home that reflected who we actually were, not someone else's idea of what we should be. Emma got a reading nook by the window, just like I'd promised. Jake got his own art corner with proper lighting and supplies I could now afford to buy him. And I got something I hadn't had since before I was married, an office, a real workspace where I could build my business without hiding my ambition. My client roster had grown to 12 regular accounts, and I'd hired 2 part-time employees, both working moms who needed flexible schedules. We were doing marketing campaigns for restaurants, retail stores, a law firm, and even a nonprofit that helped other women transition back into the workforce. The irony wasn't lost on me, but the real transformation wasn't in my bank account or my business success. It was in watching my children understand that security doesn't come from depending on other people. It comes from knowing you can depend on yourself. Emma started a junior business club at her new school, teaching other kids about entrepreneurship. Jake began selling his artwork at local craft fairs, carefully counting his earnings and deciding how to spend or save each dollar. They were learning lessons about independence and self-worth that I wished I'd understood at their age. The call came on a Thursday evening in October. Marcus. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, his voice lacking the confidence I remembered. "I've been hearing things around town about your business. People are talking about how well you're doing." I almost laughed. "And? Look, maybe we were hasty about this whole divorce thing. Jessica and I were not working out. I think we could make another go of it, you and me, for the kids' sake." For the kids' sake. The same phrase he'd used to justify 8 years of financial control and emotional manipulation. "Marcus, let me ask you something. Do you know what Emma said at school last month? Do you know what your daughter thinks about the life we're building?" "Sarah, I'm trying to be reasonable here. You've proven your point. You can work, you can take care of yourself. I get it. But wouldn't it be better for Emma and Jake to have their family back together?" "Their family is together," I said calmly. "They have a mother who shows them every day that they don't need anyone else's permission to build the life they want. They have a home where their opinions matter and their dreams are supported. They have security that comes from watching someone work hard and succeed, not from depending on someone else's money." There was a long pause. "I made mistakes, Sarah. I know that now." "Yes, you did. But Marcus, I'm not the same person who needed your permission to spend money on groceries. I'm not the same person who was afraid to make decisions about her own life. That woman doesn't exist anymore." Marcus's voice got sharper, more like the tone I remembered. "Fine, but don't think this is over. Don't think you can just replace me in their lives." "I'm not replacing you, Marcus. You're their father, and they need to have a relationship with you. But I'm not your wife anymore, and I'm never going back to being someone who has to ask permission to live her own life." After I hung up, Emma appeared in my office doorway. She'd been doing homework in her reading nook and had obviously heard the conversation. "Mom, are you okay?" I looked at my daughter, this strong, confident girl who spoke up for herself and others, who believed she could accomplish anything she set her mind to, and I realized that everything I'd been through was worth it just to give her this example. "I'm more than okay, baby. I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be." The greatest gift I gave Emma and Jake wasn't financial stability or a nice house. It was showing them that you can rebuild your life at any point, that you can choose courage over comfort, and that the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself. 3 months, $47, and 2 children who needed to see their mother fight for their future. That's all it took to build a life from nothing. And we're just getting started. If Sarah's story touched your heart, you're not alone. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is show the people we love, especially our children, that we refuse to accept less than we deserve. Whether you're in a situation like Sarah's or you know someone who is, remember this. It's never too late to rebuild your life. It's never too late to teach your children that their worth isn't determined by someone else's opinion of them. And it's never too late to prove that the strongest foundation you can build is the one that comes from believing in yourself. Sarah started with $47 and the courage to try. 3 months later, she had built something that no one could take away from her, her own independence and her children's unshakable belief that they could accomplish anything. If this story inspired you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Your share could be the encouragement someone needs to take that first brave step toward building their own life from nothing. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of courage, resilience, and transformation. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that could change your perspective on what's possible. Until next time, remember, you're stronger than you think, and you're capable of more than you know.